Hello and welcome to Global Eye. Each week, we come to you from a different part of the world to showcase the very best of BBC World Service journalism. I am Sami Awami, a reporter for BBC Africa. For the past 2 weeks, I've been on assignment here in Madagascar, which has been gripped by political unrest, fueled by Gen Z anger and frustrations. I'll be your guide to what's been happening here and why it matters.
And this isn't the only place that's been gripped by protests. Across the world, young people have been demanding a better deal from their governments. Many regimes have responded with brutal force. We'll bring you a BBC Eye investigation into one of the worst incidences of police killing in Bangladesh's history amidst demonstrations that led to the fall of the government. And we'll take you to Indonesia, where locals are fighting back as entire villages are sinking.
Berarti pohon ini bisa menahan sedimen untuk menahan laju ombak.
Madagascar is the world's fourth largest island and home to almost 32 million people. It's celebrated for its biodiversity and untouched beauty. But beneath the rich landscapes, this country is facing a crisis that threatens its fragile stability. It's the world's largest producer of vanilla, but also one of the world's poorest nations. More than a quarter of its population are living below the poverty line, and only a quarter of people here have access to electricity. That's according to International Monetary Fund.
It's also one of the youngest nations in the world. It gained independence from France just 65 years ago, and more than half the population is under the age of 25. Since independence, Madagascar has been caught in a cycle of coups, contested elections, and economic setbacks. The recent protests were sparked by widespread power cuts and water shortages, but quickly developed into wider discontent with the country's leadership over unemployment and the management of the economy.
Around 29th of September, the protest turned violent when security officers opened fire on demonstrators. At least 14 people were killed and dozens injured. The government claimed the crackdown was necessary to prevent foreign sabotage, but human rights groups have condemned the response as excessive and unlawful.
Maramila Vitsvits.
The country's president and former DJ Ange Rajouel has been ousted and impeached, and the High Constitutional Court has named a colonel from an elite military unit, CAPSAT, as the country's new leader.
On a pris le pouvoir. Ça, c'est le palais présidentiel.
I spoke to Kano Randrianarina as events were still very much in flux.
On est dans un pays où règne actuellement un chaos. Un chaos parce qu'il n'y a pas de président. Lui, il est parti à l'étranger. Il n'y a pas de président du Sénat parce qu'ils ont limogé le dernier président du Sénat. Nous avons un Premier ministre qui n'a pas de gouvernement. Donc, qui dirige le pays? Moi-même, je me pose la question. On est dans un chaos total.
Since I sat down with him, Kano Randrianarina has been sworn in as president of the new military government. He has committed to fresh elections within 2 years. It's the second time in just over a month that youth-led protests have brought down a government, marking a wave of Gen Z unrest across the globe. In Nepal, anti-corruption protests led to the storming of parliament and the prime minister's resignation. 70 people were killed. That same spirit of defiance is gaining momentum in Madagascar, where young people are drawing inspiration from youth movements worldwide. What binds these seemingly scattered uprisings, from calls to education reform in Morocco to demonstrations against crime in Peru, is the digital thread of solidarity. Technology has given rise to a shared visual language, emojis of raised fists and flames, manga characters, comic book heroes battling corrupt systems. These symbols have become rallying cries, memes of resistance that transcend borders.
One of Gen Z's revolutions took place in Bangladesh, and its impact has been seismic. In July 2024, young people's anger over a controversial quota system for public sector's jobs developed into nationwide unrest.
An estimated 1,400 people were killed and thousands injured during weeks of unrest.
But what really happened, and who was responsible? The BBC team pieced together the events of one of critical days of the revolution using so-called open source techniques to analyze videos, documents, and eyewitness accounts. Here's Ridija's report.
August 5th, 2024. Demonstrations have been taking place across the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka, for weeks. Protesters flee a barrage of bullets. In this neighborhood of Jattabari, police fire indiscriminately, killing at least 52 people and injuring countless others. With unseen footage, accounts from police and protesters, we uncover what happened and who was responsible. For 15 years, Bangladesh was ruled by Sheikh Hasina and her Awami League party.
Bangladesh always maintained the human rights. To me, human rights means their security, their right to food, right to vote, right to live, everything we maintain.
But in July 2024, protests ignited across the country after the reinstatement of Bangladesh's quota system, a law that limited access to government jobs.
About 30% of jobs were set aside for the families of veterans who fought in the country's War of Independence.
Students like Russell Mahmood coordinated the protests.
যখন দেখলাম যে আমার এই কোটা সংস্কার এটা আমি যেহেতু শিক্ষার্থী আমি এই কোটার যদি হচ্ছে বৈষম্যের শিকার হয়ে যায় তাহলে আমি দেখা যায় একটা ভালো জব পাবো না তখন জনতাও আমাদের সাথে এসেছে
The protests are met with a brutal police crackdown. The country is plunged into a communications blackout. The government orders internet services to be shut down.
সরকার চাচ্ছিল যে আন্দোলন যেভাবেই হোক দমন করার জন্য
Bijoy, a young student, becomes a powerful voice in the rising resistance.
আমাদের ফার্স্টে প্ল্যান ছিল আপনার যখন ইন্টারনেট শেষ হয়ে যায় সবাইকে আবার একত্রিত করার কারণ গণহারে গ্রেপ্তার চলছিল কোথায় কে ছিল আমরা কারোই খোঁজ পাচ্ছিলাম না
সবগুলোকে অ্যারেস্ট করতে বলছিলাম মানে সবাইকে বলা হয়েছে যে যেখান থেকে টিকাটা পাবো ধরে ফেলো
Hasina issues an order. Police and security forces are to use lethal force. This leaked recording, which has been verified by BBCI, shows her directing the security response. But the crackdown only inflames the protests. And on August 5th, protesters begin marching into Dhaka to demand her resignation. Among those protesting are two friends, Shawan and Miraj.
মিরাজ ভাবতো যে একটা পরিবর্তন দরকার যে সমস্যাগুলোর মধ্যে আমাদের পুরো বাংলাদেশ জর্জরিত ছিল এখান থেকে একটা পরিবর্তন দরকার
বিশেষ করে আমাদের বৈষম্য যে চাকরির ক্ষেত্রে সবাই অনেকেই আমাদের দেশে বেকার।
এবং কোনো অন্যায় মানে দেখলে ওইখানে প্রতিবাদ করতেন।
ওর সাথে আমার সাথে এলাকায় সবসময় উঠা বসা দেখা। ওর মধ্যে যে বিষয়টা ছিল যে সবাই একসাথ করে রাখা, একটা অভিভাবকের মতো। এই কারণে আমাদের বন্ধুত্ব এতদিন এত গভীর, আমরা ফ্যামিলিগতভাবে সবাই অ্যাটাচড।
The two friends joined the march at Jattabari, a key junction guarded by a major police station.
এই জায়গাগুলা লোকে লোকারণ্য ছিল, অনেক মানুষ, মানে মানুষের মধ্যে ভয়ভীতিও ছিল না।
What happens next leads to one of the worst incidents of police violence in Bangladesh's history. We've gathered and analysed hundreds of videos, photographs, and eyewitness accounts to build a detailed picture of what happens.
এটা হচ্ছে যাত্রাবাড়ি হাইওয়ে, পুলিশ ইচ্ছামতো গুলি করতেছে, যে দেখতেই পারছেন, এই যে স্নাইপারের আওয়াজ, ঠিক আছে?
At 1:55 p.m, police charge out of the station. Forcing protesters back down the highway. Protesters are pushed back. The army arrives and stands guard between them and the police.
আশেপাশ থেকে খবর আসতে থাকে যে শেখ হাসিনা পদত্যাগ করবে, আর আর্মির প্রধান উনি হয়তো ভাষণ দিবে।
The army tells Sheikh Hasina that they can't prevent protesters from reaching her residence. And at 2:25 p.m, she escapes by helicopter to a military airport. Around the same time, army vehicles start pulling out of the area, but troops are still stationed outside the police station. Miraj and Shawan move towards the station.
তো আমরা এইভাবে দাঁড়ায় দেখতেছিলাম, তো খুব সম্ভবত এখান থেকে একটা গাড়ির কোনো সিলিন্ডার বা কোনো টায়ার ব্লাস্ট হয়। আমি তো উঠে দিছি দৌড়।
But Miraj stays and captures army soldiers abandoning the police station. Seconds after the army withdraws, at 2:43 p.m, police open fire again. Miraj continues filming, his final moments captured on his own camera.
যাওয়ার সাথে সাথে আমি দেখতে পাই যে কয়েকটা স্তূপের মধ্যে আমার বন্ধু পড়ে আছে। তো আমি দেখে আর নিজেকে রাখতে পারি না, আমি নিজের কন্ট্রোল হারায় ফেলাই যে একটা বন্ধু আমার সাথে ছিল এতক্ষণ মারা গেছে।
But for those still out on the streets, the horror continues. At 3:27 p.m, police retreat to a temporary army barracks. Others escape in civilian clothes. Some officers at the police station are trapped inside, as protesters break into the building, setting it on fire and killing at least 6 officers. Videos show the army standing by as the shooting continued. As chaos subsided, one question remained: who was responsible? The police we spoke to told us that they were following orders.
আমরা চেইন অফ কমান্ডে চলি, কমান্ডের বাইরে যাওয়ার কোনো অপশনই নেই।
Abul Hassan was the officer in charge of Jattabari police station and was there when the massacre took place.
হ্যাঁ, এইটা আসলে কি ওসি স্যারের উপরে, তার সাথে উপরে সবার যোগাযোগ। এখন উনি ওই মুহূর্ত পর্যন্ত তো উনি আমাদের অভিভাবক, বুঝতে পেরেছেন? উনি যেভাবে বলবেন, ডিসি স্যার যেভাবে বলবে, এভাবে।
Hassan has been arrested, but we've been told he was instructed by more senior officers throughout the protests. One of those was Chief Detective Haroon or Rashid, seen instructing police officers in July in Jattabari. The head of the police force in Dhaka, Habib or Rahman, gave orders from a central command room.
কমিশনারের নির্দেশনা ছাড়া কোনো কিছুই হবে না। গুলির যে নির্দেশনা, এটা সামগ্রিক নির্দেশনা ছিল, যেটা কমিশনার বলে দিছিল।
যদি কেউ আমাদের আইন শৃঙ্খলা ভঙ্গজনিত কোনো ধরনের অপতৎপরতা চালাতে চান, সেটি যেই হোক, সেটি শক্ত হাতে মোকাবেলা করা হবে।
The Home Minister, Azarujzaman Khan, was in charge of the police. And at the top of this chain of command was Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Her leadership and orders set the stage for the crackdown. Sheikh Hasina is now in exile, but in Bangladesh, she's been put on trial for crimes against humanity, charges she strenuously denies. Her Awami League party denies she bears responsibility for killing of protesters. The trial continues.
সেই 5ই অগস্টের দিনটা হয়তো আনন্দ ছিল মানুষের কাছে। এতটুকু মানে সান্ত্বনা নিয়ে আর বর্তমানে আমরা বেঁচে আছি যে আমার ভাইয়ের রক্তের বিনিময়ে যদি এই দেশটা আবার নতুন করে শুরু করতে পারে, নতুন করে মানে স্বৈরাচার মুক্ত দেশ গঠন করতে পারে।
আশা রাখতে পারি। এখন আশার তো মানুষ বুক বাঁধে, আশা ছাড়া তো আমাদের কিছুই করার নেই। বাংলাদেশে যেন এরকম কখনোই না হয়, কারণ একটা মানুষ ক্ষমতার জন্য যদি এত মানুষ যেন প্রাণ না হারায়, ও ন্যায় বিচারটা পাক, এটাই আমি চাই।
আর এখন ওই ঘটনা মনে পড়লে নিজের চোখে পানি আসে যে কতগুলা ভাই মারা গেছে। এখন আমরা আরেকবার স্বাধীন করছি দেশটা, তো আমার নিজের ওই ভয়টা আর নেই। আগে যে একটু ভয় ছিল, ওই ভয়টা এখন আর নেই। এখন একটু সাহসী হয়ে গেছে।
Young people harnessing technology for mass movements is nothing new. The Arab Spring and Occupy Wall Street in the 2010s relied heavily on Twitter to share information. But for this generation of digital natives brought up with smartphones and pandemic lockdowns, online platforms from Instagram to TikTok have become such an integral part of everyday life that they've become a fundamental human right. And when governments around the world have sought to curtail or control that access, the impact has been explosive.
Here's some other great journalism from the World Service that you can catch this week. BBC Monitoring's Russia editor Vitaly Shevchenko's online article tells the intriguing story of the accidental discovery of the fate of his childhood home in Ukraine. Here's Vitaly with more.
It all started a few weeks ago when I was sitting at work at the end of a pretty busy day, and I was sort of feeling nostalgic about my home village in Ukraine's eastern Zaporizhia region called Verkhnya Krynica, which is a poetic name, means upper well in Ukrainian. And I had a look at some satellite images, and what I saw was very familiar. It was the lush greenery of Verkhnya Krynica in Ukraine's Zaporizhia region. There was the Kakhovka reservoir, the one that we called the sea, because it was so big. All those memories from my childhood, they started flooding back. I remembered how I heard local women singing Ukrainian folk songs at the Kakhovka sea, as we called it. And now it's gone after the Kakhovka Dam was destroyed during the war. I saw the railway tracks, and I remember the trains that used to pass through our village. Now, they're gone after the tracks were also destroyed during the war. And then I saw a new road that appeared in the village, even though it's a pretty dangerous place. It's occupied by Russia. And yet, somebody's made a new road leading right into my house. And looking at satellite images, we found something really interesting. That dirt track got more use when the weather got colder and wetter.
So who has made that track? And who's now occupying my childhood home in this Russian-controlled part of war-torn Ukraine?
You can find out more on the BBC News websites or by listening to Ukrainecast wherever you get your podcasts.
And now we are taking you to Indonesia and Java's north coast, where entire villages are quietly vanishing as land sinks and tidal flood creeps inland. This is a climate crisis that experts warn could engulf the region by 2050. Ayomi Amindoni reports on how local people are fighting back as their livelihoods are disrupted and homes under threat.
Along the northern coast of Java, the sea is swallowing land, village by village. Java is Indonesia's most populous island, home to more than half of Indonesia's 284 million population and a hub for over 55% of the national economy. Ningsih has lived in Eretan Wetan for her whole life. What once was a quiet fishing village, now a ghost town, as entire neighborhoods are disappearing beneath the tide.
Tadinya sih waktu saya kecil di sini belum punya suami, belum punya anak, nggak ada air kayak gini. Waktu itu sih masih garing. Saya tambah tahun tuh saya kayak gini.
The village is among many others grappling with severe land subsidence caused by decades of excessive groundwater extraction. It also has been affected by rising sea levels for years. Ningsih watched the floods destroy roads, swallow homes, and many families left. Hers chose to stay. But this is what they have to face every day.
Singgahnya sing ngarep, terus manjing, kabeh, bene kok bakal surut teka banyu jam 12 awan, surut jam 4 so esuk, terus bakal surut karena ditarik dijebol bisa metu dewek.
Across Java's north coast, more than 30 million people live in areas at risk of being submerged. Factories and industrial zones have replaced mangroves and fish ponds, speeding up a slow disaster already worsened by climate change. Experts warn by 2050, much of the coast could be underwater. The government is now building a massive defense. a 500-kilometer seawall, and giant pumps to hold back the ocean. But critics say it may not be enough, especially as more coastal land is reclaimed by development. Nearly 300 kilometers away from Ningsih's village, in a coastal city of Kendal, one man is fighting to keep his home from disappearing as a result of erosion. Mangrove roots protect coasts from erosion and storms, while providing breeding ground for fish and shrimp.
Kendal mulai abrasi terbesar itu pada saat tahun 2019-an. Itu mulai terasa abrasi yang sangat kuat sekali. Kenapa? Ternyata ada permasalahan yaitu alih fungsi lahan, di mana kawasan pesisir sekarang ini menjadi kawasan industri.
Factories and ports built for an industrial zone in Kendal have long been accused of clearing coastal mangroves, a claim officials deny. They argue that land subsidence has been an issue long before the factories appeared. But with the natural barriers gone, the sea began to eat the land. The government has rejected the claim that industrial zones are the root of the problem. They say the sinking of Java's coastal areas are mostly natural process. But Wasito saw the damage firsthand and decided to act.
Saya coba untuk menanam di situ. Setelah penanaman saya tumbuh, itu warga pada ikut menanam. Setelah saya tanami, ternyata pohon ini bisa tinggi dan sedimen pasirnya terhenti di situ. Berarti pohon ini bisa menahan sedimen untuk menahan laju ombak.
Since 2006, Wasito and his neighbors have planted thousands of mangroves, building a living wall to hold back the sea. The forest now stretches along the shoreline, protecting homes and livelihoods. But as more land is developed, the remaining mangrove zones are disappearing fast.
Kalau sudah terjadi semua menjadi kawasan industri, yang menjadi kawasan konservasi butuh perhatian khusus. Kalau tidak ada perhatian khusus, dampaknya akan ke sana.
As the tide keeps rising and the effect of climate change more severe, communities along Java's sinking shores are doing what they can do to protect the land they call home.
Thank you for joining me in Madagascar. We want your feedback on Global Eye. Let us know what you think on social media using the hashtag BBC Global Eye. Next week, we'll be reporting from Peru. Goodbye.